Good evening and welcome to Wisdom Wednesdays, the 38th episode. Sorry, apologies on that. We are on the second season, which is on wisdom wellness. And today's topic is yoga and COVID-19. I'm your host, Carol, and with me are special ladies, Soraya, Selvi, and Fazana. And with us also today is a very, very special guest and expert on the subject, Raghu Ananthanarayan. Welcome, Raghu. Selvi will introduce him in a more fitting manner in a few moments. For me personally, I have always been intrigued by the movements and poses of yoga, which I have no doubt has increased my balance, flexibility, breathing, strengthening, and bringing a sense of calm in this frenetic world we live in. My day always starts at 5 a.m. with a yoga routine, which I try to continue wherever I am. It takes a bit of commitment to get into this routine, but once on it, trust me, there is no better way than yoga to start the day off. And so, to allow for maximum time for our guest to present his angle on yoga and its effects on dealing with COVID-19, our ladies will very briefly give their view on what it means to each one of us. And by the way, you, our viewers, are encouraged to ask any questions you may have for Raghu by typing them on our chat. So let's move on to, let's say, Soraya.
Oh, thank you, Carol. It is so beautiful and heartening for me to be today with you all and also have our special guest, Raghu, who's going to talk to us about a 3,000-year-old practice and to bring it alive today is telling us something really powerful in that things never die. What I know about yoga, is that me? So much of disturbance. When it comes to yoga, I always thought it is about the breath. And I want to remind our listeners, particularly our women whom this program is geared for, that this echo, I'm sorry, this program is geared for is that we are going through unprecedented times of challenges. So what we have to remember above all is, as yoga would tell us, we have to inhale the future and exhale the past, let go of the past. So that is the hope we bring today for you, how to look at these challenges in a new way through the medium of using yoga, because I think the Bhagavad Gita says, yoga is the journey of the self, through the self, to the self. I mean, this is powerful. Selvi?
Thank you, Soraya. Well, I think I could say that again. We are currently definitely living in unprecedented times. It is a time of uncertainty, propaganda of fear psychosis, COVID pandemic, infections, death of loved ones, loss of income, bankruptcy, inflation, lockdowns, vaccine debates, and conspiracies. People are losing faith in institutions that should normally set gold standard for ethics, morality, and good governance. People feel lost and let down. And they do not know where to turn and to whom to trust with their questions. No one seems to have the right answers. There is an overload of information in the media and on the internet, but people are not able to see the wood from the trees from this volume of information that they are being bombarded with. They're confused and in turmoil of shifting goalposts and procedures. They have lost their thread and peace of mind. To make matters worse, we are under lockdown for about 2 years, and they have not had the usual interactions with their friends and families during this time. Friends and family who could have been the source of inner strength and mental well-being. It is in this time we need all the help we can get from the different healing disciplines to get through this difficult period. And so we have so far looked at Qigong, homeopathy, acupuncture, food as medicine, psychiatry, and checked out even analyzing horoscopes. In this search, we are now looking at yoga, and we are glad that Raghu, you have been able to spare some of your precious time and come here to speak with us. Thank you. Carol, you're muted.
Yeah, Fuzzy, can you say something before we go back to Selvi to introduce Raghu?
Yes, I mean, I have to agree with Selvi and Soraya. These kinds of times have brought a lot of focus on alternative therapies. And from my experience, I see a lot of corporates in the corporate world also engaging in yoga sessions, trying to engage with teachers early morning and evening for their employees as well. Because I think yoga helps your mind, body, and your it's total wellness. It has the mindfulness element, a spiritual element as well. So I wouldn't say I'm a committed yogi, but yes, I do practice, and whenever I do, I find great relief in it. But it's the discipline that I lack, and I hope I can get there someday where I can become a regular practitioner. I practice meditation regularly, but I must say yoga I'm not regular enough, and looking forward to hearing you, Raghu.
Thank you, Fazana. Selvi, yes, the moment we've been waiting for. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Carol. I have really the great honor and happy to present Raghu's CV here, his bio. He is a multifaceted person, formerly trained as an engineer with an MS in biomedical engineering in IIT Madras. He has practiced as an engineer in the past, but his long quest or his lifelong quest has been involved in the questions of human life. Extraordinary teachers mentored Raghu Anantanarayanan like Yogacharya Krishnamacharya and Sri Desi Kachar, J. Krishnamurti, and Pulin K. Garg. His engagement with them not only transformed him, but it evoked in him his desire for service of fellow human beings. His work revolves around the capacity building and helping individuals, groups, and organizations to discover their own dharma and become the best they can be. In academic areas, he has been the co-founder of Sumeda's Academy of Human Context and the Barefoot Academy of Governance. As director of Flame Tower Nowhere Private Limited, Raghu spans the commercial world of consulting by helping redesign the client organization for greater alignment and synergy. Raghu has authored several books, Learning Through Yoga, Totally Aligned Organization, Leadership Dharma, Arjuna and the Timeless Metaphor, Organizational Development and Alignment, the Tensegrity Mandala, and Antaranga Yoga. Antaranga Yoga, I think that's how it's pronounced, the foundation of Indian psychology. Currently, his wife Sashi and him, they're the chief mentors and working on nurturing people at the Ritambara Ashram, which they have set up in the beautiful Nilgiris hills in India. So Raghu, could you first define for us what you mean by yoga and what are the overall benefits for us as individuals and for the society? And as a corollary, if you could throw some light, what Antaranga Yoga?
Antaranga Yoga, Selvi.
Sorry?
Antaranga Yoga. I'll just tell you.
Antaranga. I see. Okay, it's Antaranga Yoga. Sorry. So because this is something I have not heard, so we would really like to know what it is and how it can help us during this COVID times. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, let me start by defining what yoga is. Yeah.
Yep.
See, I remember a time when my teacher Krishnamacharya was asked by somebody, what is Hatha Yoga, what is Raja Yoga, and all that. So he quickly dismissed the question by saying Hatha Yoga, Patha Yoga. And what he said afterwards was that people give it brand names today, and there's only one yoga, and that's the yoga that has been defined by Patanjali. Okay, so we have to go back to that to understand what is yoga. And what Patanjali did was he was a rishi who compiled all the ideas of yoga that went before. And yoga has mentioned in very, very ancient times, much longer than the Yoga Sutras have existed. So he's put together ideas which are there in the Mahabharata, in the Upanishads, in the Vedas, in Ayurveda, and so on, and compiled it into 195 sutras. And a sutra is just a line which is about 7 words, right? And each word is supposed to contain a very critical truth. So it's called Saravata, which means it's full of juice. It's essential and universal and so on, right? So out of the 195 sutras, about 10 or 12 deal with asana and pranayama. Yeah, about another 60 or 70 and odd deal with transcendental states. So you have about 100 sutras that talk about transformation, which is a psychological transformation, right? And that portion is called Antaranga Yoga. So the first portion is called Bahiranga. Bahiranga means external, and this is internal. And what comes after this is called Parama Antaranga Yoga. And Parama Antaranga Yoga are stuff that cannot be talked about, though people wax eloquent about it. These are things that are beyond comprehension, right? And this part is very critical. Yeah. So there's a bit of a problem here because, if you do a small thought experiment, no? If every time you ask me for water, I either give you ice cubes or I give you steam, right? That's what you've been getting. Now, I'm this poor Indian guy who studied with a teacher for 10, 12 years. You ask me for water and I bring you plain water. And you start asking me, what is this? Yeah, so Antaranga Yoga is just plain water. It's not ice, it's not steam. Yeah, and today, unfortunately, ice is mixed with all kinds of things, including beer. And like you said, goats. So this middle ground is extremely critical. Yeah. So that is Antaranga Yoga. And it has very clear descriptions of how perception takes place, how perception gets colored, how do you remove the coloring in the perception, and so on. And the goal is very simple. Can I understand myself and the world that I live in accurately, without projections, without distortions, and so on? And a mind that is not capable of doing this cannot actually turn inward and go into the much deeper states. Yeah, so that's what I've been focusing on.
Can we ask some questions, Raghu?
I can't hear you clearly, Selvi.
Can we ask some questions now?
Yeah, sure, if you want to.
All right.
Because there's so much to speak that I'd rather not start on that, no?
Right.
To begin
Yeah,
with,
whatever
Raghu,
questions you have is fine. Yes,
to begin
Suraya.
with, Raghu, I've heard so much about Patanjali and the 195 sutras. First time you said it's very brief and short. I'm wondering if you can share that link with us and our listeners. If not now, maybe you can send
Suraya,
it.
there are hundreds, there are lots of translations of it all over the place.
Oh,
I've written something in a series of blogs, yeah,
okay. Okay.
called, I think it's called The Inner Work of Yoga Sutras, if I remember right. One of my
Okay.
students, Anita Balasubramaniam, has put it together from a series of uh, of lectures I had given a few years ago.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. Thank you.
Could we share that on the chat, Raghu?
Raghu,
I
can you
I
hear
have
me?
to go and fish it out, Selvi. I don't know the exact
Right.
uh,
Okay.
title of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't want to waste time right now. I'll send it across to you.
All right. Thanks.
Yes.
So, Raghu, can I ask you something? How does yoga help one to become inward looking and spiritually evolve to become more aware and socially conscious? Especially at this time, people are on lockdown, people are, businesses are suffering, people having hard time because they don't have the finances nor the goods to deal with at home, to give their children a good meal. So there are so many different things that's happening. um, how is it that we can reach deep within ourselves and look at a spiritual angle, or how do we calm ourselves down with yoga?
You're asking two, three questions at the same time, Carol. Uh,
Yes.
See, yoga starts when somebody says that I'm in dukkha and I need to do something about my dukkha. Yeah, that is when the real process of what is called the sadhana of yoga starts. But most people today are not looking for that, no? Most people today are looking for cosmetics, they're looking for, uh, you know, uh, some kind of a problem they have. Most people who come to us come with headaches and stomach aches and back aches and so on. So they're only interested in the therapy, right? And the way we look at yoga practice is very much like the way it is looked at in Ayurveda. So there are four parts to it. Yeah, one part is what is called shamanam. So if you come to me with a particular set of symptoms, I can teach you yoga which will enable you to deal with those symptoms. Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
symptomatic treatment is available for a whole range of diseases. And the the kind of things that yoga can respond to are psychosomatic illnesses. Okay, so there's a difference between illnesses that are based on the psychosomatic disturbances and other kinds of illnesses. Yeah. And then you go into what is called shodhanam, which is to cleanse the insides, not just deal with the superficial symptomatic treatment. And then you have another level called arogyam. So arogyam is when you really build up the inner strength and so on. And that is when serious yoga practice starts, the Antaranga Yoga and so on. And then there is another level called swasthya. Swasthya means to be able to be anchored in the true self. So there are four stages. So if you come to me, depending on what you want, right? If you want just symptomatic treatment, we give you symptomatic treatment. That is not yoga. That's just asana practice. It is called chikitsa kramam. Chikitsa is therapy. So there are ways in which we can give you therapy, right? And then there is something called shakti kramam, which is to build strength. And then there's something called adhyatmika kramam, which is to go inward. And these are very different approaches. Yeah. The other thing I must quickly add is that in our school, we don't usually teach people in groups. Yeah. All my life, when I've been teaching yoga, 90% of it is one on one. Yeah. We only teach people in groups when they're young, So even if there are differences in the body, they're young enough so you can do something which everybody can work with. Or if we go to corporates and all of that, and they have this idea that you have to do it in a group. And if you do it in a group, you can only do the common minimum, right? Just imagine there are 5, 6 of you here. Each of you has a different constitution, different requirement, different level of interest. There is no such thing as putting all of you in a group and teaching you yoga, right? So it has to be done specifically, though there are some generic things that people teach and so on, and today that's become the norm. Yeah, so there are a number of practices, and it depends on
So,
what you.
so Raghu, based on what you said, it's truly enlightening to me, the 4 stages. And you're right, most of us come and we deal with the symptoms.
Yeah.
And when you talked about cleansing the inside and building the strength and being anchored to the true self. So what is really the short what's wrong with only cleansing the system
Nothing wrong.
outward? Nothing
Nothing
wrong?
wrong. Nothing wrong. So if that's what you want, that's what I'll teach you. It depends on the question, Suraya.
Okay.
See,
No,
there's a
because
very simple idea in all of yoga and Upanishads and all that, that, I answer your question. I don't dump you with things just because I know something. You'll see that in all the Upanishads, na? The student will come in, they will ask a question, right? And then the discourse will be about that question. Now, if that person has a deeper question, they'll go back, they'll meditate on the question that was asked, and then they'll come back with another question. All the Upanishads are structured this way. Yeah, so that's a process called Shravanam, which is listening, Mananam, which is contemplative, pondering over. And then if you have an insight, you live by that insight. That is called Nididhyasitavyam. And that will take you to the edge of your next question. So then you come back and you listen and you dialogue and you go back. So that's the process of yoga. So if you come to me for headache, I will treat you for headache. I will teach you, and your headache will be different from Selvi's headache and Farzana's headache. So I can't put you in a headache class and teach all of you. Yeah.
But
And then after your headache is gone, yeah, one of you might come back and say, you know what, I'd like to understand something more. If you come back and you want to understand something more, I'll wait for you to ask me a question. And based on your question, I will offer you something else.
lovely. I will quickly finish with this question. You talked about cleansing the inside. I think we
Yeah.
all struggle with that, bridging that gap, doing only outward, but not cleansing the inside. Is there a specific, of course, you might say you have to ask the question and be awakened to the inside cleansing, but is there something that you recommend for us to a path or a practice to be more aware of what needs to be cleansed inside?
See, to give a slightly generic answer, because that's what I can do just now, you start with by looking at the relationship between the food that you eat and your health. Yeah. And this is a very critical interface, because obviously I am the food that I eat. So I can't expect to be cleansed inside if I'm eating bad food. Yeah. So that's one very critical interface. And there are some generic rules here. You don't eat too much of oil. You don't eat fried food. Yeah. You don't, obviously, sugar was never part of our original food. And if you people are in touch with your grandmothers and their generation and how they looked at food, you'll probably get the right food for your constitution. Because most families had a history, they had a way. My grandmother, for example, would immediately, as soon as a child is born, and by the time they're 1 or 2 years old, they'll start figuring out, she's like so and so in this, and she's like so and so in that. And they're actually figuring out the constitution of the child. And then there's the family history, saying people with this kind of constitution, this is the kind of food we give them, and things like that. Right? And my great grandmother was even more astute. Yeah, she would ask us in the morning, what happened in your sleep, how were your bowel movements, and so on. So as children, we used to feel very queasy about it. But listening to us, she would make different herbs for different people. Yeah, so many of this wisdom is there in many families. Western medicine simply talks about calories, and calories does not help cleansing. Calories does not create health. Yeah. So, depending on how good your digestive system is, you can have more or less fresh food. Yeah, but today even that is dangerous because half of fresh food is chemically treated. Right? So if you can get, not very chemical heavy food, then the more lightly you cook your food, the better for you. Yeah. And watch your relationship with food. Na? There's this new thing that's going around, which is actually extremely old, which is to only eat twice a day. Yeah. So when I was a kid and we were living in a joint family, we had only 2 meals. Yeah, one meal at about 10:30, 11 o'clock, and another meal before sun sets. Yeah, it's this Kellogg's and these breakfast companies that have convinced the world that you have to eat 3 times and you have to have a heavy breakfast. And now, you know, all kinds of medical people are coming up and saying that's a prescription for ill health. And one of the things not to follow is the American food pyramid. Because lots of stuff, Selvi was talking about misinformation. One of the biggest lobbies that has screwed up people's understanding of food is the American food lobby. And the entire food pyramid that they talk about is very unhealthy. So Johns Hopkins and people like that are coming up with some alternative ideas. Yeah, and one of the alternative ideas is don't have breakfast. And the American economy will crash if you don't have breakfast, and if you don't have corned beef and all of that, the American economy might crash. So it's being fought over. But if you want to be healthy, just avoid anything that you find on an American prescription.
So in conclusion, what you're saying is watch what you eat, have a great relationship, despite
That's
all
right.
what is happening around you. The world can crash, but be mindful of your relationship with food and what
Your
you eat.
food. That's
Okay.
right. And
Thank
keep
you.
it simple. Keep it very simple. Yeah. As much non-cooked food as you can manage well. Yeah, a few days of non-cooked food and you know whether you're digesting it well or not. Right? Fruits, fair amount of liquids, not too much of oils, but some oil is necessary. You shouldn't avoid oil, right? Ghee is actually very good. Okay, a lot of medical establishments are also saying ghee is much better than most other stuff. Yeah. And if you have your grandmother alive, go and talk to her. Find out what she thinks is good food. Yeah. And the other rule is not to eat food that is not seasonally grown. That's a very simple thing, right? It's kept in cold storage. You don't know what kind of bacteria and whatever is getting, slowly incubated there. Yeah, as fresh as possible. These are simple rules to start with.
It's 1930.
Yeah, and then you can build on that. But it's very important to start watching the relationship between yourself and food. Right? The first ways in which it shows up is bad digestion and bad sleep. This is not difficult to watch out for.
So
Yeah,
Raghu,
and
but can I ask you?
lot of yoga starts with right food.
Okay.
In fact, the word tapas, na, Krishnamacharya would insist that tapas fundamentally is your relationship with food. And the second is your relationship with anything that stimulates you, all your five senses. Right? You can't expect to be healthy if you're watching Hollywood, uh, these Bold and Beautiful or whatever is currently going on Netflix and so on, because those things are aimed at constantly agitating your emotional system. Right? So emotional balance is very, very critical. Yeah, imagine watching a television program which is not triggering your emotions every 5 seconds. You'll shut it off. So there's a lot of science that's gone into this whole process of studying how to keep you emotionally hooked onto television. All that is very bad for health. So all that is tapas.
Sorry, can I ask you one thing? One of the latest things that everybody's focusing on is intermittent fasting.
Just 1 minute. I've got a call. One minute.
So no, Selvi, we were talking about this, I think previously, that a lot of
Hi,
people
Raghu.
are concentrating on doing
Hi.
intermittent fasting.
Raghu, you have to start the meeting.
I'll just
because
start.
So I was just wondering, what Raghu would think of that, right? What do you think, Selvi? You're muted.
Intermittent fasting is what
Yeah.
Raghu is talking about, because he says you have your
Two
first
meals.
meal at 11:30, 10:30, 11, and then the next meal is at 4 before sunset. So you are actually fasting from, say, 5:30 or 6 up until 10:30 or 11 the next day, which is a very long span of time. And that is intermittent fasting, and that is what yoga is suggesting.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we are there wherever.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's supposed to be
So, Raghu,
modern,
yeah.
but that's very ancient in all cultures. Yeah.
Yeah. Raghu, there's one other thing, I mean, in this current scenario, first of all, I must thank you for actually enlightening us on Antaranga Yoga, because I really had no idea that yoga had a section which actually deals with psychiatry and psychosomatic illnesses, and about the mind, whatever the mind goes through. But we had always thought that yoga is actually a twisting and turning the body into asanas. But now I look that it's a holistic approach of mind, body, and soul as well. So if it is so, can it also provide the peace of mind that we need so badly now during this pandemic, when the pandemic is raging?
Yeah, of course. Everything that is taught in the name of mindfulness is taken from the Yoga Sutras. Almost every paradigm shift in psychology in the West has come from dipping into yoga. So Jung has done a lot of dipping into yoga. Yeah, the whole humanistic psychology has got a huge influence of yoga. Right, the latest things, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and dialectical behavioral therapy. They are based on a study of Buddhist practices, which are all taken from yoga. So almost every movement in the West, which has been a significant movement in psychological understanding of the psyche has come from their study of the East, especially yoga and Buddhist philosophy. And nowadays it's accelerated because the Dalai Lama has been very open and invited many of them. So many of these practices that are happening now are actually triggered by people who are monks in Dalai Lama's system. Right? You have this whole EQ, Daniel Goleman. Daniel Goleman is a monk. I mean, he's with the Dalai Lama. And the first books he wrote were all with the Dalai Lama. He wrote a book called Dangerous Emotions or Destructive Emotions, where he literally translated what Dalai Lama was saying. Right? And then they go on to create their own thing and have a intellectual property rights. I don't know how that happens, but that's how colonization has always happened.
So can you tell us a little bit, what we can do in our little homes where we are now locked down to have this sort of clarity of mind and sort of peace in this whole calamity that's happening around us? Is there,
there are two, three simple things.
Yeah, is it asanas?
Yeah, there are 2-3 simples you can do.
Yeah.
What I can tell you over the thing right now, na? See, one simple thing to do is to look at your own breathing patterns. Okay, and the simplest breathing thing to do is to do Ujjayi breathing, and that can be learnt in 2 minutes, na? Yeah, if you just sit straight, sit quiet, and start humming. Yeah, mouth closed, and you hum. Right? You can sense where the humming sound is coming from. Now try and say ha with your mouth closed. So you'll hear a hissing sound instead of a humming sound. That is Ujjayi breathing. Okay, that has a certain way of controlling the breath and so on. So you can do that on the inhale and on the exhale. So you start with that. Then you start watching how you can lengthen the exhale. And then start introducing pieces of pause. At the end of the exhale, you pause. At the end of the inhale, you pause. Right? Do this before every meal. Do this before you go to sleep. Right? And you'll quieten yourself down every time you do this. But it's very critical that you listen carefully to the sound. Yeah? So what Krishnamacharya would say is, you can do the breathing and you can do asanas. If you're not paying attention to your body, it is not yoga. Right? So you can do it as an exercise, but it's not as helpful as when you pay attention and do it. Something else happens. And you can do this before anything. If you have an important meeting, like the chairman of Mitsubishi, sit down and do some zazen. This is zazen. Yeah. So these are things you can do right away. And then when you start doing this, there are other simple mudra pranayamas which you can do very easily. These are not difficult to teach. Yeah. And if you have learned asana and so on, then add breathing to it and add attentiveness to it. It'll make a difference.
So Raghu, yeah,
And avoid,
I do this
and
humming thing.
avoid Netflix like the plague just because you're feeling bored.
Okay. Sorry, I was going to say, I do this humming
keep
thing.
us going here now, because we don't have anything else to do at home.
Yeah, learn knitting. My daughter is doing a lot of crochet, Selvi.
Okay.
So Ahalya's, making all kinds of things.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Obviously,
Take
there's
up
a lot more.
painting. Take up painting. Take up anything. You don't have to be a master artist.
What do you
if
say
you're
about
interested
walks
in
in the
music-
wilderness, Raghu?
Pardon?
What do you to say about walks in the wilderness, with your...
It's recommended. It's recommended in the Yoga Sutra.
Yeah.
Because the woods have a quality of absorbing your God, I'm constantly getting a call. Yes, Ankit?
Yeah, so, Selvi, what I was saying is, walking out on the grass
Ankit?
barefoot, that kind of thing, walking. Yeah. So, and walking in the wilderness, they say to walk without a hat on. So
Right.
what Raghu just said about it absorbing probably your negative emotions and things, so that helps, I suppose, when you don't have your hat on. So, yeah.
Fazana, you wanted to ask something about immunity and yoga.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the same thing as you actually, Selvi, which you asked what we can do today. I mean, though Raghu said that he has to treat each one individually, my headache won't be the same as yours. Then I was thinking, what is the formula we can give the general public out there, to cope with today's pressures of COVID and everything else. So he answered that with this simple breathing that we have to read up and do.
One of the things, Fazana, they in India, I wonder where Raghu is from. I wonder whether they have inculcated yoga into the education system, because I think we have to start with the young kids, right? Become a way of life for them. I mean, when you say yoga, obviously not the all the asanas and the yogic posture and all of that, but maybe the meditation part of it, or maybe mindfulness part of it. What do you think about the importance of that, Soraya?
Absolutely, so true. Yeah, and I was really wondering. It's true to say that to really live in this kind of a vacuum, for lack of better words. But when you need to know what's happening around you, how can you still stay calm without it disturbing you? That was something I wanted to ask him. Like,
unfortunately, I think he's lost the connection. So maybe he'll come back on, hopefully.
Yeah.
But yeah. I think that's what he was answering, Soraya.
It's interesting what he said about food, isn't it?
Yes, and also I think that calmness, calming us down, and peace of mind, and to achieve clarity, balance, and equilibrium. I think he was suggesting the breathing. The
breathing.
Breathing, yes.
Oh yeah.
Breathing. I think maybe we should go back to him and ask him to explain a little bit more on.
Yeah, unfortunately, Selvi, he has he's coming back on.
He's joining. Yes.
Yeah.
We need for him to show us the breathing technique again. I think it's
and the book, also that book. I want to know what book. Once again, if he mentions the name, we can type it in for our viewers.
Oh, the Patanjali, the 120.
No, the book he said about Dalai Lama. He was talking about a particular book. So,
that is Daniel Goleman's.
Are you back? Are you, Raghu? Yes. Can we have a video, please?
Yeah.
Great. So go ahead, girls.
Yeah. So we were wondering, critical to what you have shared so far, Raghu, is the breathing technique. Because people like us, it's true, we can live in that space, but we also need information from the outer world, stay engaged and as activists. But I was wondering, for not only for activists, for everybody, could you just walk us through the breathing technique again?
Yeah, you sit straight.
Yes.
Balanced. Don't strain yourself.
Just a second. Are you using your account?
Yeah. I don't know what is happening. No wonder.
Ningalode meeting irkema. How can you use your account?
I think we're losing him again. He's talked about the humming that you do. You close your mouth and you actually try to say ah with your mouth closed. So then you bring out this hum from your throat and you hum. The thing is, when you hum and you hold as long as you can, and every time you try to hold longer and longer, and you put your tongue on your upper palate while you're doing that, right?
Right.
So I do this in the morning, but what he did say that I don't do is when you're doing it, try to listen to the sound in your head.
Right.
You know, that's as important as the humming part,
Yes.
right? So
And
you
the
do,
second- yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
One has to listen to the vibration that's
Correct.
happening inside you, because it is that vibration that is giving you that energy, you know.
Yes,
So
Raghu. Yeah, Raghu.
Yeah, sorry, yeah. There's
No,
a lot
go
of
ahead.
confusion.
We're
There are
waiting
two,
for you.
three things happening at the same time, and I've screwed up on Zoom accounts and so on.
So, yeah, Soraya had a question for him.
So
Soraya?
you were going to talk to us about the breathing, Raghu.
Yeah. So you sit balanced, yeah,
Yeah.
and as you exhale, you can make a humming sound. Right? And listen to the humming sound.
Okay.
And make the humming sound for as long as you can. So when you do that, your stomach will contract.
Okay.
So breathe out fully, yeah, and don't do anything. Your breath will come in, yeah. Just let your breath come in slowly and breathe out like this. Right now, what you do is you make that humming sound softer and softer. It'll become a hissing sound. And really listen to that sound.
Okay.
That's it.
And you were also saying, you know, close your mouth and say ah at the bottom.
Ha. So instead of if you say ha,
Ha.
it'll become the hissing sound. Not open the mouth. Try and say. It'll become a hissing sound. No.
Okay, that's the Ujjayi breath.
That's the Ujjayi breath.
What about the inhale? How should the inhale be?
You don't worry about the inhale. If you exhale fully, you will inhale fully.
Okay.
So you first have to learn. You first have to learn how to exhale.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If you inhale, you end up usually inhaling into the chest, and that is bad breathing. You have to learn how to exhale and inhale from the stomach, which is actually your diaphragm working.
Okay.
We need to come to Nilgiri, Raghu.
That too.
Raghu,
So-
you were going to talk to us about the third one, third type of breathing.
Third is you start lengthening the breath once you start getting comfortable, and then you add a pause at the end of the exhale. Pause for 2-3 seconds. At the end of the inhale, you pause for 2-3 seconds. Yeah.
Okay.
And then start lengthening the whole thing.
So you actually lengthen the exhale.
You lengthen
And the
the exhale
inhale.
first. As you lengthen the exhale, your inhale will also get lengthened.
Get lengthened. Okay.
Right?
I
And
mean,
then
yeah.
you can work on ratios and proportions and so on.
So these are simple things that we can do at home,
Yeah.
particularly for women and children who don't really know much of yoga. Like
Yeah.
if they want to do something like a simple types of yoga, asanas, or any other kind of practice other than these 3 breathings, what would you suggest?
One thing is to play with children. No?
Play with children.
Yeah, but you don't have to see, it's very difficult, especially in today's context, if you're inside a room,
Right.
to make a child do something. But you can start playing with children, right? And then you could do simple things like, can you say ah? How long can you say ah? Right? Then get them to sing do re mi fa. How long can you hold the breath? Right? Make a game of many of these things, and then the children will follow you.
Right.
The problem will be adolescents, not children.
Wow, one of the most one of my favorite teachers is Krishnamurti, Jiddu, and we have the Krishnamurti Foundation about 1 hour from where I live. When I go, I participate regularly in K dialogues.
Oh,
And I'm
lovely. This
yes,
is
and I'm
with Ojai?
hi, yes, yes.
Oh, wow.
So I'm I mean, interested in knowing what your relationship with him was. But my more important question is yoga and the mind, Raghu. How can it help us change our mind, our perspectives, and improve our relationships with people practicing yoga?
See, one of the suggestions in the Yoga Sutra is something that is there in the Buddhist tradition also. It's called Maitri Karuna Mudito Pekshanam Sukha Dukkha Punya Punya Vishayanam Bhavanataha Chitta Prasadanam, which is simply asking the question, can your interfaces with people be filled with friendliness, with compassion, with equanimity, and with joy? So observing this is yoga. This is one of the practices recommended in yoga. And if you go to Vipassana or whatever, they'll keep telling you this. Yeah, they quote the same sutra in Pali.
The Brahma Viharas. You're talking about the Brahma Viharas.
These are called the Brahma
Correct.
Viharas. Yeah,
Okay.
they call the Brahma Viharas in Buddhist thing. It's exactly
So
the same sutra.
in every interaction, in every conversation, in every relationship, to bring that forth to the table, to the mind.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I think Farzana had a burning question, and we have been hounding you with questions.
Fuzzy? Fazana?
Until she comes on, I have so many questions. So what does your day look like, Raghu, in your ashram, in Nilagiri?
Yeah, I'm living a little far away from the ashram. The ashram is at the edge of the forest. It's a little difficult to live there. My day starts invariably with after having at least a liter and a half of water and so on. Yeah. It's about an hour and a half at least of doing asana practice and various kinds of meditation, right? And then I do some teaching. Most of my time is spent now on teaching, right? And then I do chanting again in the evening.
Okay, and your meals, food?
I have one meal at 12 and one at about 6:37.
Raghu, can I ask you something from a very strange point of view? But I do a lot of sport, and sometimes when you do sport or when you hike, you start panting very when it's strenuous. Is there a certain thing you can do in yoga breathing practice that helps you to recover quickly? It's a very specific question.
If you do breathing practices, there are lots of breathing practices, Carol.
Yeah.
And there are some breathing practices that are specifically designed to help you increase your breathing capacity.
Right.
Yeah. Lots of, some of the big Olympic people like Emil Zatopek and people like that have used many of these practices. And these have to do with extended breathing, holding breath, and so on. So you have to train yourself, and then it becomes possible for you to have a lot more stamina.
You're right. Especially these days, we are much more, what should I say, laying around, not doing very active things anymore, especially with the lockdown in Sri Lanka. So that was one of the questions, because when you get back to sport, then you're hyperventilating almost, because your fitness has gone off,
Yeah, try something simple, Carol. Do you do any running on the spot and things like that?
No, I do biking. I do stationary biking.
You do biking.
But then I go out and play physical
just see
sport.
how much, when you're doing your biking, Can you do breath control with your biking?
Ah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's called Brahman Pranayama. We do that with walking and things like that.
Oh,
So you get
excellent.
into a rhythm. You
Yeah.
breathe in for 4 steps, breathe out for 6 or 8 breaths, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out. And once you get comfortable with it, you start adding a bit of pause on the
A
exhale.
pause. Okay.
So 2 breaths or 3 breaths, you stop. So you go 4-8-2, 4-8-2,
All right.
and then you go 4-8-4.
So the 4 is the breathing in, right?
4 is breathing in, 8 is breathing out, 4 is
Out.
holding your breath
Okay.
out.
Okay. Sounds so easy to, convert yourself if you only know how. I asked this question in your absence earlier on. In India, do you have yoga introduced as part of the curriculum or not? Because here in Sri Lanka, I think it's badly needed, required. I don't know in India how they, simple exercises for children.
No, that's a very difficult question because this whole thing has been politicized, and it's easier to introduce yoga into America. Can you believe it? Than
Right.
into England than into India right now. But there are lots of people who are doing it, but it's got politicized.
Raghu, for the people who are actually tied down with the lockdown and staying at home, and who are worried about catching an infection, what are the ways in which yoga can help? I mean, which section of the yoga? Is it asanas, or is it Antaranga Yoga, or is it which part of
No,
yoga
you
can
can't
help
separate it out, Selvi. You
to,
can't separate it out like this, na?
for immunity, to build up immunity in the body? Yeah.
But all of this will help you build immunity. Watch your food, watch your breathing, and when you start getting used to it, you watch the way in which you interact to people. I've taught you 3 things today. Just follow that. All of that will boost your immunity, and don't watch Netflix. No, very seriously. If your emotions keep going up and down, every time your emotions go up and down, you eat into what is now called in the West coping energy, right? So if you eat away your coping energy by getting excited about what Rambo is doing or something, right? Your own ability to to create immunity goes down.
Mhm.
Yeah. So emotional stability is very critical. It's okay to watch funny films where you laugh.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I have.
Laughter helps immunity.
What about feel good films?
Yeah, that's what he's saying.
Feel good films are okay. Yeah, feel good films and funny films are okay.
Right. Okay.
So sadly, we are coming
And
towards
watch
the
cricket
end of
matches when
today.
you know your favorite team is winning. Yeah, watch sports. Yeah, you avoid this
So,
tension of, yeah.
so what you're
Vyasan, now
saying is to be
it's another
careful of
brand.
external stimulants. Okay.
Yeah. So I want to ask one specific question from Raghu before we get off. We are living through quite turbulent times here in Sri Lanka. I don't know whether it's the same where
Everywhere.
you are, but politically. And what's happening to the environment, what's happening to people getting sick and how they're treated, etc., etc. So when you talked about emotions, when you watched Netflix and the emotions turning, I think this is key because people log on to their social media and all they can see are, what the government is doing, everything that's bad. And the crux of the matter is there's nothing we can do to change it. Because whatever we shout or get angry about does not change the decisions our leaders make.
Yeah.
Is that, what do you say to that? I mean, again, go back to breathing to calm yourself down and not watch all this stuff?
One of the things that you have to do is to make a choice, Carol, of and be clear what is it that I can act upon? What's my zone of influence? What's my zone of control? Everything beyond the zone of control and zone of action, you just trust the Lord above. And if he goofs up, you had it. That's it. it looks like it's goofing badly. So what can you do? So you have to be clear, what is it that I can do, what is it that I cannot do? And learn how to drop
It's 20 hours.
anxiety about stuff that you can't do anything about. Yeah, because
Yes.
it only makes it worse. Yeah, so if you're healthy and you're prepared, when and if the shifts happen, you're ready to act. Right? If you
Correct.
don't do that preparedness right now with hope that there will be a time when you can act, you're exhausting yourself. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I
you're
think
but
that's
wasting
what's
energy.
happening to a lot of people actually in Sri Lanka at the moment. And Soraya, one last question.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, but Raghu, it easily said and done. But people look at the likes of Gandhi and Dr. King and Rosa Parks and Mother Teresa. They how did they navigate these challenges? But things have to be done also. How do we
No,
how
but
do we
Suraya,
acquire balance?
no, Suraya, all the people you spoke about had a very, very strong relationship with the divine. So, a large part of yoga is how you develop an active relationship with the divine. This is not belief. This is not believing in God. This is actually experiencing God. And you cannot experience God if your mind is full of belief.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Raghu. Unfortunately, we have come to the end of our show. Thank you so much for joining us from India. I
Thank
think,
you.
everybody's going to be very interested to hear more from you. And hopefully sometime in the future, we can have you back. And in the
Sure.
meantime, if anybody can
Thank
visit
you.
you out there, that would be great.
Thank
So
you. Bye-bye.
thank you. And from all the panel, we have to say thank you to all our viewers. And if there's any information we can add on our Facebook page about what Raghu mentioned about the various asanas or with the breathing techniques, etc., we will try and add on onto the Facebook page. The next program is on the 13th of October. And again, it'll be very interesting because it's also on the Wisdom Wellness series of programs. On that, good night. God bless.
Good night.
See you
Thank
next
you
week.
very
And
much.
thank you from all the ladies here.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thanks.
We can't see the montage.